I'm convinced that the act of thinking logically cannot possibly be natural to the human mind.
Oh, wow. That is, that's quite a way to kick things off.
Right. That quote actually comes from astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. And honestly, it perfectly frames the mission of our deep dive today.
It really does, because we always sort of assume that, just because we're intelligent beings, we are naturally logical.
Yeah, like it's our factory setting or something.
No.
But today we are exploring the core tools of critical thinking. We're looking at um, how deduction and induction help us construct and honestly deconstruct sound
Which
arguments.
is such a crucial skill right now.
Absolutely. And for our sources today, we are drawing really heavily from an excerpted translation of Tom Chatfield's comprehensive book, Critical Thinking.
Yeah, and that was actually crowdfunded into this amazing free digital collection by the Visanaka program.
Which means all science, for those wondering. And to keep things grounded in the messy reality of the daily news cycle, we are also utilizing notes from a really interesting article. It's titled Six Logical Fallacies Politicians Often Use.
Because, I mean, we see those every single day.
We really do. So our mission here is to equip you with the mental toolkit you need to, selectively process information, evaluate logic, and navigate this crazy, noisy digital world without feeling completely overwhelmed.
I love that. And getting back to that Tyson quote, it's so true because logic is actually a discipline. It's a structure you have to actively apply.
Right.
Uncritical thinking is basically our default state because, well, it just requires less energy.
Okay, let's unpack this. If our minds are smartphones, critical thinking isn't just like another app you download.
Yep.
It is a complete operating system upgrade.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. It fundamentally alters how every other piece of data is processed, like how your battery power is allocated or how your spam is filtered out.
Exactly. But before we can learn to build these perfectly sound arguments,
Yeah.
we really have to recognize what that baseline operating system looks like when we don't use logic.
Like when we just leave it on the default settings.
Yeah. The opposite of critical thinking is blind acceptance. It's just taking things totally at face value without ever pausing to examine the machinery behind the claim.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, so Chatfield uses this incredibly common everyday example in his book. He shares this email he received, which was supposedly from a family member.
Oh, boy. I think I know where this is heading.
You probably do. So the message reads, I'm writing this with tears in my eyes. We came to Manila for a short vacation and we were robbed. Cash, wallet, credit cards, phones, all gone. Our flight leaves in a few hours and we need our hotel bills paid immediately.
Wow. The classic stranded traveler scam.
Yep.
I mean, most of us have seen some variation of that just, sitting in our spam folder. But when it actually slips through to the inbox, it still successfully steals millions of dollars a year.
It's crazy how effective it is.
And it works because it is literally engineered to bypass that logical operating system we were just talking about. It injects panic and urgency and this intense emotional manipulation. It basically demands immediate compliance.
Right, because the scammer doesn't want you to evaluate the premises of their claim. They want a purely emotional reaction.
They want you moving fast.
Exactly. But critical thinking forces a pause between the stimulus and your response.
Yeah.
You stop and ask, wait, does this relative even have a passport?
Yeah, or like, why are they emailing me instead of calling their spouse?
Right. Why is the syntax of this email so strange?
Yeah.
You essentially begin to deconstruct what is fundamentally an argument.
Which means we should probably define what an argument actually is, at least in formal logic, because in everyday life, we treat an argument as a conflict, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's like two people yelling at each other in a YouTube comments section or getting red in the face over a holiday dinner. But that is not what we're talking about here at all.
Not at all. In critical thinking, an argument is a deliberate attempt to persuade someone of the truth of a conclusion through logic.
Okay, so it's a structural thing.
Yeah, it's a presentation of reasons, which are called premises, that are intended to lead inexorably to a very specific conclusion.
Got it.
So whether a politician is giving a stump speech, or a marketer is selling a new vitamin supplement, or even just a friend convincing you which movie to stream tonight, they are presenting an argument.
So the superpower you actually gain from this OS upgrade is the ability to reconstruct those arguments.
Exactly.
You take whatever they're saying, you strip away all the emotional noise, the rhetorical flourishes, the the manipulative adjectives and you just lay out the bare bones.
You're reverse engineering their thought process.
Right. You isolate the exact sequence of logical steps, the premises that they're using to justify their conclusion.
And Chatfield points out that this is really the most reliable way to spot hidden defects or missing data.
Because it's all laid bare.
Yeah. When you force a winding, passionate speech into a standard form like premise 1, premise 2, conclusion, it becomes glaringly obvious if the math just doesn't add up.
Okay, but wait. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Isn't it absolutely exhausting to mentally deconstruct every single thing people say into premise 1, premise 2?
Well,
I mean, if my spouse says, hey, we should get pizza tonight because we had burgers yesterday, I am definitely not going to stand there and rigorously reconstruct the logical validity of their dinner preference.
no, please don't do that.
Right. So when is this level of rigorous analysis actually worth our time in everyday life?
This actually raises a really important point.
Mm.
You definitely shouldn't apply formal logic to a pizza order. Doing so would be, well, exhausting and probably socially alienating.
Yeah, my spouse would not be thrilled.
Exactly. We reserve this tool for decisions that demand certainty, or when we're assessing high-stakes claims.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you are signing a mortgage, or evaluating a major medical intervention, or deciding who to vote for based on a politician's heavily stylized speech, that is when you absolutely must strip away the noise and reconstruct the argument.
Okay, so keep the operating system running efficiently in the background for the small stuff, but only spin up the heavy processing power when the stakes actually require it.
Precisely.
So once we know how to strip an argument down to its bones, the premises, the conclusion, we obviously need a method to ensure those bones actually connect properly.
And this introduces our first core logical tool, deduction.
Deduction. Yeah.
Deduction focuses purely on the structural integrity of an argument. It's basically truth-preserving.
Meaning, if the starting premises are true and the logical structure is correct, the conclusion must logically be true.
Exactly. There is zero guesswork. The conclusion is basically already contained within the premises. Deduction merely draws it out into the light. It works like a detective just extracting exactly what the clues mean without adding any outside information.
To isolate how this structure works independently from reality, the Chatfield book uses an intentionally absurd example, right?
Yes, it's a great example. So premise 1, all fish live in water. Premise 2, I am a fish. Conclusion, I live in water.
Okay, so if we look purely at the structure of that, the conclusion naturally and unavoidably flows from the premises.
Right.
If all fish live in water and we just assume the speaker is a fish, it is mathematically guaranteed that the speaker lives in water.
Yes, and this highlights the critical difference between an argument being valid and an argument being sound.
Okay, break that down for me.
In logic, an argument is valid if the structure works perfectly. So the fish argument is logically valid. But an argument is only sound if it meets two criteria. It must have a flawless, valid structure, and it must be built on verifiable, completely true premises.
And obviously premise 2, I'm a fish, is totally false.
Exactly. Therefore, the argument is unsound despite its structural validity.
So what does this all mean for us? It's basically like a beautifully built mathematical equation. The addition could be perfectly calculated, which makes it valid. But if you plug in completely made-up numbers at the very beginning, you still get a meaningless answer at the end.
That is exactly it.
Deduction is just the calculator. It doesn't judge the numbers you punch in. It just flawlessly computes the result.
And that calculator analogy is vital when we look at the other source in our stack. The article on the 6 logical fallacies politicians often use.
Oh, yeah. Let's get into this.
Because bad actors rarely present arguments with invalid deductive structures. Humans are actually fairly good at noticing when a conclusion just fundamentally doesn't follow a premise structurally.
We can usually spot bad math.
Right. So instead, political fallacies are almost always designed to smuggle false premises into the calculator.
Okay.
They rely on the audience hearing a smooth, valid structure and confusing that for a sound argument.
That is so sneaky. Okay, let's walk through those 6 fallacies because they really perfectly illustrate how deductions can be weaponized if we aren't paying attention. The first one the article highlights is the false dilemma, which is sometimes called the either-or fallacy.
Yeah, a false dilemma artificially restricts the premises. So a politician might say, premise 1, we either cut all taxes immediately or the economy collapses. Premise 2, we cannot let the economy collapse. Conclusion, therefore, we must cut all taxes immediately.
Wow. Structurally, that is a perfectly valid deductive argument. Like, if those premises are true,
Yeah.
that conclusion is absolutely undeniable.
Yeah, exactly. The deception lies entirely in premise one. They presented a massively complex, multivariable economic system as a simple binary choice.
So by smuggling in a false premise, they manufacture an argument that sounds valid but is entirely unsound.
You got it.
Okay, the second fallacy is the straw man. This happens when someone distorts or, exaggerates their opponent's premise just to make it easier to knock down deductively.
Right, so if politician A says, we should allocate 5% more funding to public parks, politician B might get up and say, my opponent wants to bankrupt the city by pouring all our money into planting trees.
It's so ridiculous when you lay it out like that. Politician B has literally just replaced the actual premise with a totally fabricated one.
Because it is much, much easier to deductively prove that bankrupting the city is bad. The audience hears the valid structure of politician B's argument, and they just nod along.
Failing to realize the initial premise being attacked was completely made up.
Yep. And then we have the ad hominem fallacy, which directly attacks the person making the argument rather than the premises themselves.
Oh, I see this one all the time. Like, a critic might say, you can't believe the findings of this new climate report because the lead scientist is arrogant and unpleasant to work with.
It's a fascinating bypass of deduction, really. The arrogant nature of the scientist has zero mathematical bearing on the structural validity or the soundness of the actual climate data.
None at all.
But by attacking the source, the speaker hopes the audience will simply abandon the deductive process altogether. They are essentially attacking the calculator itself rather than checking the math.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. Okay, the fourth fallacy is the slippery slope. This is incredibly common in legislative debates.
Oh, incredibly common.
The argument claims that a relatively small first step will deductively lead to a chain of related events, culminating in some significant, usually terrible effect. Like, if we allow a new stoplight at this intersection, next they will put stoplights on every corner, traffic will grind to a halt, and businesses will flee the city.
The problem there is that the slippery slope completely breaks the rule of truth preservation. Remember, deduction requires each step to guarantee the next.
Right.
The stoplight at one intersection simply does not mathematically guarantee stoplights on every corner.
Yeah.
The links in their chain are just probabilities disguised as deductive certainties.
They're jumping to conclusions. Which brings us to the fifth fallacy, begging the question, which is also known as circular reasoning.
This one is always frustrating to listen to.
Yeah. This happens when the conclusion of the argument is literally just included in the premise. So someone says, this policy is the best for our country because it is the most beneficial policy we could implement.
It's the logical equivalent of saying X equals X.
Right.
It is completely valid structurally, but it provides zero new information. It does nothing to prove its soundness. It just spins the calculator in a circle.
And finally, the last fallacy in the article is the red herring. This is a deliberate diversion of attention with the intention of abandoning the original argument entirely. So if a politician is asked about rising healthcare costs, they might reply with, well, what we really need to be focusing on is the heroism of our frontline medical workers who sacrifice so much every day.
And the trick there is that it's a statement that is almost certainly true and it's universally agreed upon, which makes the audience feel really good.
But it is entirely irrelevant to the deductive argument concerning the actual math of healthcare costs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The speaker essentially drops a shiny object to distract the audience from the fact that they aren't addressing the premises of the original question at all.
Okay, so looking at these 6 fallacies, false dilemma, straw man, ad hominem, slippery slope, circular reasoning, and red herring, you really start to realize how vulnerable deductive logic can actually be.
It really is.
I mean, if politicians and bad actors are constantly manipulating the premises, and deduction requires 100% true premises to be sound, how do we ever navigate reality?
That's the big question.
Because in our daily lives, we almost never have 100% absolute certainty about the data.
You're exactly right. The complexity of science, of economics, and definitely of human behavior means we are constantly operating with incomplete data.
Yeah?
We basically cannot deductively prove much of anything outside of pure mathematics. And that limitation forces us to transition to our second vital tool of critical thinking, induction.
Okay, so if deduction is the calculator processing the exact numbers, induction must be the tool we use to figure out what numbers to plug in the first place.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, induction is sometimes called ampliative or developing reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
The word actually comes from the Latin root inducere, meaning to lead to.
To lead to. Okay.
Unlike deduction, which deals in absolute certainty, induction deals in probabilities and degrees of confidence.
Yeah.
You aren't just extracting a conclusion hidden inside the premises, you are expanding a theory beyond the premises based on your observations.
And we rely on induction constantly, don't we?
All the time.
Like when you wake up in the morning, you assume the sun will rise. You don't have deductive mathematical certainty that the universe won't suddenly end overnight.
Thankfully, no.
But you have a massive amount of historical observational evidence that the sun rises every day. So you induce that tomorrow will follow the pattern of today.
Exactly. And because induction doesn't deal in absolute guarantees, we don't judge inductive arguments as valid or sound like we do with deduction.
Oh, okay. How do we judge them?
We judge them by their strength. Strong induction relies on heavily established patterns, massive sample sizes, and rigorous evidence. Weak induction relies on flimsy evidence, small sample sizes, and our own cognitive biases.
Ah, okay. So if someone sees like one person in a green shirt run a red light and they induce that all people in green shirts are terrible drivers, they have built a severely weak inductive argument based on an insufficient sample size.
Perfect example. But here's the catch. Even with incredibly strong induction, with massive sample sizes, you never actually reach 100% certainty. There's always a vulnerability.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit scary.
Yeah.
To illustrate that vulnerability, Chatfield brings up one of the most famous examples in all of philosophy, the black swan.
Such a classic example.
Now, I know it's a term commonly used in modern finance today to describe an unpredictable, high-impact event, but it originates from a very literal historical reality, doesn't it?
It does. For thousands of years, Europeans used inductive reasoning to conclude that all swans are white.
And based on their available data, that was incredibly strong induction.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single swan any European had ever seen, recorded, or heard about for millennia was white. They had millions of observations pointing to one highly probable conclusion. The pattern was virtually flawless.
Flawless. Until the year 1697,
Right.
when the Dutch explorer Willem de Vlaming sailed to Western Australia and discovered, you guessed it, black swans.
Boom. In an instant, a single observation completely destroyed thousands of years of established scientific consensus.
Exactly. One bird shattered a premise that an entire civilization believed was an absolute fact. The lesson of the black swan basically proves that inductive certainty is an illusion.
Wow.
No matter how many millions of white swans you observe, you can never deductively prove that a black swan doesn't exist somewhere out there in the dark.
See, but this realization can feel totally paralyzing. If induction can literally always be upended by a single black swan tomorrow, isn't it basically just a glorified guess?
It can feel that way, sure.
How do you and I confidently use this tool to make major life decisions, like investing in a retirement fund or choosing a medical treatment, if we can never be 100% certain?
What's fascinating here is that the instinct is to view that vulnerability as a fatal flaw. But embracing that uncertainty is exactly what makes induction powerful.
Wait, really? How?
By accepting that we aren't 100% sure, we actually remain intellectually humble and open to new evidence. If you believe your inductive conclusion is an absolute unquestionable fact, you just stop looking for new data.
Oh, see.
You slip right back into that rigid, uncritical thinking, the blind acceptance that makes you susceptible to those scams and political fallacies we talked about at the beginning.
That makes so much sense. So the most valuable inductive reasoning actively pushes us to test and falsify our theories rather than just passively looking for more information that confirms what we already believe.
Yes, falsification is key.
Like, if you want to prove all swans are white, looking for more white swans is honestly a waste of time. It just feeds your confirmation bias. You should be actively searching the globe for a black swan.
Precisely.
If you search the harshest, most diverse environments on Earth and still only find white swans, your inductive argument genuinely gains strength.
And this is the very foundation of the scientific method. It is exactly how we evaluate claims without falling into those 6 fallacies.
Right.
So when a politician says, my policies always create jobs, uncritical thinking just looks for the one factory that opened and happily declares the premise confirmed.
But critical thinking says, Let's actively look for the black swan. Let's look at the broader data to find an industry that lost jobs under these policies.
Exactly. You are constantly hunting for the structural defects in deduction, and you are constantly weighing the probabilities in induction.
It's a two-part system. Deduction gives you the structural blueprint to ensure your conclusions safely follow your premises, which prevents bad actors from slipping a false dilemma or a straw man past your defenses.
And induction gives you the practical ability to weigh probabilities and build strong premises out of a chaotic, uncertain world
Right.
by observing patterns and rigorously testing them against reality. Together, these are the critical thinking tools that prevent you from being easily fooled.
They protect you from manipulated data, they shield you from rhetorical sleight of hand, and they stop you from wiring money to a phantom relative stranded in Manila.
You just pause, you reconstruct the argument, you check the validity of the premises, and you weigh the probability of the claim.
It takes effort, for sure. And as Neil deGrasse Tyson noted, it really does not come naturally to the human mind. But once you install this critical thinking operating system, you stop merely reacting to information. You actually process it.
You become an independent thinker.
Exactly. In a digital world that is frankly designed to exploit your intellectual blind spots. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final lingering question we want you to mull over on your own.
Yeah, this is a good one.
We learned today that the absolute best inductive reasoning requires us to actively try to disprove our own beliefs rather than just confirm them. So think about a deeply held belief you have right now, something you are incredibly confident about regarding society, economics, or human nature. Have you only ever looked for white swans to confirm it?
Tough question to ask yourself.
It really is.
Uh-uh.
What would happen tomorrow if you intentionally set out to find its black swan?